To be well prepared is so essential in life. President Abraham Lincoln said, "If I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I will spend 6 hours sharpening my axe." 6 hours sharpening the axe. We prepare for life by going to school 12 years of our lives. Then we spent another 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 6 or 7 years at university to prepare us for a specific calling. But we also prepare for in case we have a fire at our house, so we buy house insurance. We even buy accidental insurance in case we drop something on our carpet or the child pulls the TV from its stand. We also have a will in case the unexpected happened and I die, then at least my family have the assurance that there is some money left aside for them, or the house will not be taken away from the bank. So we have an insurance for that. We have a will. Shouldn't we do the same for our spiritual lives? The Apostle Peter says that we need to do that. But before he talks, I want to say that there are 3 things that we have to be prepared for in life. Number 1, we have to prepare our minds and our bodies for holy living. Number 2, we have to prepare to witness for Jesus. And number 3, we have to be ready for Jesus' second coming. Now the Apostle Peter in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 14 and 15 says, "As obedient children, do not conform yourselves to the former lusts as in your ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. Because it is written, 'Be holy, for I am holy.'" Being a Christian in life is different from being an ordinary citizen of the world. The Apostle Peter admonishes us not to fall back into our previous lifestyles we had before we know Jesus and before the gospel spoke to our hearts. God called us out of the world to be in his kingdom of light. And therefore, God has called us not to carry on with the practices of darkness, but to live a new life holy to him. The Apostle Paul said in Romans 12, verses 1 and 2, "I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." Like the Apostle Peter, the Apostle Paul says, we are to prepare our minds for holy living. By presenting ourselves for God's purposes, we are doing what is called our reasonable Christianity. To be mindful of to be mindfully and boldly setting our bodies aside from the world. But we are also cautioned to grow spiritually, to know what God's will is for our lives. With our minds, we choose right from wrong, and we bring glory to God in our thoughts that give action in our daily living. So we give expression in bodily actions. Okay? So as the world's people give action through their thoughts, so the Christian also should give action to their thoughts. And the two thoughts should be different from one another, and people should be able to see that. The second point that was made is that being holy means to be witnessing for Jesus. 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 15 says, "But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is within you." Did you get it? There must be a special place for God in our hearts. Be ye holy, for I am holy. Let your minds be transformed. Now he says here, our thoughts should be filled with the goodness and the mercy of our loving God, because he saved us from sin and eternal death. Therefore, be prepared to give an answer to people who do not know why you are a Christian. Give a reason for the hope that you possess that they do not have. In the Sabbath school lesson this morning, we talked about restlessness. The world is restless. The world is chasing after some things and they don't know what. They are constantly unhappy. Some of them have got everything that the world can give them. They are full of money and still they are restless. They are still chasing something and they don't know what. You are a Christian because of what Jesus had done for you on the cross. Jesus took away your sin and your guilt. That is the thing that makes you restless. Because of your guilt of the sin that you've done in the past, you feel there's something wrong and you have to rectify it, but you don't know how. And Jesus did that for you. And the good news of the gospel is that Jesus took away your sin, and now you can have peace in your heart because your guilt has now also been taken away. So, the Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 20 to 23, "But now Christ is risen from the dead and has become the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ all shall be made alive, but each one in its own order. Christ the first fruits, afterward those who are Christ's at his coming." Living for this life only leaves us with no future after we die. Because of Jesus, something has happened. Jesus' death on the cross and resurrection from the dead gives us a hope of a better future. Something that people who do not know Jesus do not have. So because of God's promise, we will see our loved ones as we will see ourselves being resurrected at Jesus' coming. So if we believe that Jesus died, Jesus rose from the dead, and if we believe in him, we also know that we will also, even though we die, we will be resurrected from the dead. And therefore we need to tell our loved ones about it. Why would I be the only one to be ready when Jesus comes and be alive, be resurrected? Why not my brother and my sister, my mother and my father, my friend and my cousin? Everyone needs to hear this good news. That is why we need to witness for Jesus. And then the third thing, be ready for a war with the enemy of your souls. Ephesians chapter 6 verses 10 to 12 says to us, "Finally, my brothers and sisters, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Yesterday, my wife put a whole pack of envelopes in front of me, and she says, "Why don't you read your posts?" So I looked at this pile of stuff, and I started to open each envelope. And as I opened them up, there was one that I got from creation.com that I've written to be part of. And there came out this beautiful pamphlet. And in the pamphlet, it talked about theistic evolution. And it also talked about creationism. And then it talked about secular or humanism, and how the humanist society in the UK, and he gave a little excerpt where they boast of the things that they were able to do. And in all of them that was noted was how they broke down the Christian faith. Okay? So we have an enemy out there. Once you become a Christian, once you believe in Jesus and you believe in the creation and you believe that you are created in the image of God, you have an enemy out there who do not want you to know that you are specially created. Okay? He wants you to have the idea that you are useless. There is no future. The enemy of humankind, who spreads lies about the state of the dead, will not sit still when we give hope to other people, telling them there is hope beyond the grave. The secret of doing battle with this enemy is not to be prepared with having black belts in martial arts. It's not going to help you. Okay? We need more power than that, because our enemy is a spiritual being fighting a spiritual battle in a literal world. And therefore we need spiritual power that is stronger than the devil's to act on our behalf against the devil in this literal world that we are living in. But thank God on whose side we are when we live holy lives dedicated to him. The Apostle Peter says, 1 Peter 5 verse 8 and 9, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world." The first thing we should remember when we are being attacked by the devil is we are not alone. Our brothers and sisters, one time or another, will battle against the enemy too. The devil is always prowling like a hungry lion, seeking whom he may devour. There are ways to be prepared for him, and we are warned to be sober. That means clear-minded. And vigilant, meaning keeping a careful watch for possible danger or difficulties. Despite the onslaught against us, we should remain faithful to Jesus, who himself was faithful to God on our behalf. Why should we live holy lives, witness for Jesus, and be prepared for a battle against the enemy of souls? It all has to do with the warning that Jesus gave in Mark chapter 13. Now that I've done the preliminary work of the sermon, let's go to the sermon proper. Okay. Preparedness for the second coming of Jesus is the real answer. After leaving that magnificent temple complex, Jesus went to sit on the opposite side of Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives. There he overlooked ancient Jerusalem. Once seated 4 of his disciples, 2 brothers each in pairs, came to him. Peter and Andrew, the elder brothers. And then the 2 youngest brothers, James and John. Interesting. Older brothers and youngest brothers came to Jesus. And they privately came to inquire from Jesus, when will Jerusalem be overthrown? Jesus did not only answer their inquiry, which means the destruction of Jerusalem, but he gave them a quick rundown of history until the second coming. Jesus says that these things will quickly happen and then the second coming will appear. Of all the main historical events, Jesus touches on the temple in 70 AD, of the Great Tribulation of 538 till 1798 AD. Then he says the signs of the sun and the moon that will be darkened, 1780 AD. And then the stars that will fall, 1833. And then he says it will be the second coming of Jesus. But Jesus then made a startling statement that is more important than the rundown of history he gave. And we find that in Mark 13, verse 32 and 33. Mark 13, verse 32 and 33. It says, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Take heed, watch, and pray, for you do not know when the time is." Okay? So for Jesus, the historical events were not as important as being ready for his second coming. Christians are to live in this world where the nations are consumed with gratifying their lusts and desires, while they have no time for holy living and reflecting on the character of God. Jesus warns his disciples to seriously consider 3 things while living at the end of human history. 1, take heed. 2, watch. And 3, pray. Why? For you do not know when the time is. Okay, that means when Jesus will come. So let's look at those 3 points then. To take heed means paying attention or looking intently into the circumstances we find ourselves in at that time. Where do we live in human history? We live near the end of this world's history. Looking at all the signs around us, we can say strange things are going to happen. Are they already happening? They are. Temperatures are getting higher and higher. We are breaking records with temperature. The ice caps are melting so fast that even the permafrost in the Russian tundra is also melting. Okay? That means that is that thick layer of soil that is permanently frozen. It's becoming unfrozen now. It's thawing out. And they just measured the temperature of over 31 degrees on the Russian tundra. Okay, so that is something. And then you have these flash floods that suddenly happen. We just had them just across the pond. The other pond, okay, the English pond toward Europe. And we heard about Germany and Belgium that had this terrible flood coming in there. So bad. We heard about the fires in Spain and in Portugal. And then we also hear about the other troubles that we have across the sea in California, the huge fires. Then we heard about the plagues that are falling, that are happening in Australia with mice and rats by the millions. So many that you can't even see the road when you are driving. It is just one grey mass in front of you. 2 years ago, they had a drought that killed a lot of the carnivores that were supposed to eat the rats. Then they had a bumper crop. And so the bumper crop caused them to have so much food that the rat population just exploded. And they don't know how to get rid of it. Even in your bed, you have rats, brother. Can you think of it? You think it's your wife tickling you here on the side. In the meantime, it's a big rat gnawing on you because it's hungry. Okay. Do you like that? It sounds terrible, doesn't it? And then, of course, we know of COVID. Of all the variants, now the Delta variant is the worst. I've just read an article that says there is in Peru another variant that's even more dangerous, that they are scared of because our current jabs is no protection against it. Okay? So just think about these things. What time period do we live in? Okay. So when we think about these things, Jesus is trying to say something else to us. He says, no, 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 no. And for that, I want to take you to the book of Luke, because Luke recorded the same conversation that Mark recorded. But Luke adds something that I think is important for us to note. In Luke chapter 21, from verse 34 to 35, this is what we read. Luke chapter 21. But take heed, you know that word again? Take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life, and that day comes on you unexpectedly. Same words, until the time is. For it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. The problem Christians will face before Jesus' second coming will be carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life. Now, what is carousing? I had to look this word up because the word is a very interesting word. So I don't know if you were able to find out what carousing means. Carousing means the activity of drinking alcohol and enjoying oneself with others in a noisy, lively way. And let me give it a modern name, raves. Okay? You know what a rave is? That is when people get together in a big complex and they start playing music and they drink and they use drugs and they do all kinds of stuff and they are just having a good time. Celebrating whatever they are celebrating. Just so that because we are not allowed to during lockdown, there were so many raves going on, you can't believe it. And the police had to break them up. There's a new festival that's coming very close now within the next few weeks. People can't wait to get to this rave. It's going to be an outdoor big music festival. Okay, people will be camping close to one another by the thousands. Can't wait for it. Because Glastonbury we missed. We can't miss this one. The second thing is drunkenness. Now, this is general drunkenness. This is not party drunkenness. This is just drunkenness. Christians will lose their soberness to think clearly and follow after the world in drunkenness. There are many Christians today that says there's nothing wrong with drinking a little bit. But you know, I've noticed that many people who say that are drinking every night a glass or two of wine. And what has happened is it's not just a glass or two of wine, it becomes a bottle a night. Okay? Because it makes me feel good and then I go to bed and I sleep. Tomorrow I wake up with a headache, so my mind is not as clear as it was before. But don't worry about it, you know. I'm not totally drunk, just a little drunk. My mind is just a little bit hazy, not fully hazy. I just heard the other morning on the radio, Radio 4, a man, and there's a book, he wrote a book about all these drugs that we are using. And my wife said she's going to get the book, so I didn't order the book, so I'm waiting for her to get the book. Did you hear that, Liffy? You ordered the book, or you said you will, so I'm still waiting for the book. And in it, he had a very good discussion. He says, did you know we are addicted to caffeine? He says the world are drinking caffeine, not much, but just enough to keep them going. If they did not have their coffee in the morning, they don't feel up to it. So they go to work and then they say, where's my cup of coffee? And when I had my coffee, I'm okay, I can run a bit. But then at about 12 o'clock, suddenly they say, I need another cup of coffee. So it's just three coffee copies a day, or maybe more. But if I don't have it, I'm not myself. Okay, and this is the thing. If I don't have my little bit of oomph, I'm not happy for the day. So, Christians, be very careful. It's not only drinking the alcoholic beverage that is dangerous, but drinking the wine of the intoxication of Babylon, those false doctrines, that is a danger. Just this week I had a phone call with a man who wanted to talk to me about the Sabbath and the state of the dead and about tithing and about Michael the Archangel. And I said to myself, I wonder this man, what is his reason? And then it became clear to me. He really didn't want to talk to me learning about Scripture. He wanted to attack Adventists because of the beliefs that we have on the Sabbath, the belief that we have on the state of the dead, the belief that we had about the judgment, and the belief that we have about tithes and offerings. When I offered to say to him, and I said, can we have a prayer before we start our study? He says, no, I don't pray with anyone anymore. Okay? Then I says, can I have your email address so I can send you the Bible study that I'm going to talk to you about? No, I don't receive anything from anyone anymore. I'm not going to church anymore because I don't believe in you guys that says we have to come to church. You are an organized religion that wants to lead me astray. I said, okay, well then what can I do? So I tried to explain to him the state of the dead. And immediately he was on to me. He doesn't believe in what I'm telling him. Because when I said, let's go to creation. No, I don't want to talk about creation. There are too many views about creation. I said, but I have to, because you have to see where you come from. No, you want to lead me astray. So I had to explain to him about how you are composed. That you are flesh, but flesh is actually soil and God's life energy combined, and that makes you soft and warm and alive. And I said, but you see there, the word that is being used in the King James is you become a living soul. It doesn't say that you received a soul or a spirit entity that is alive on its own, separate from the body. No, 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 we have to go to the New Testament. We don't teach the Old Testament anymore. Okay, go to the New Testament. In the New Testament, we go to the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 4. And there he says, and then I saw the souls of those who have been beheaded, reigning with Christ 1,000 years. And they came to life to live with him the 1,000 years. He says, you see, disembodied souls. I says, no, the text says they came to life. That means they were resurrected. And you need to read verse 6. Verse 6 says, happy and blessed is he who have part in the first resurrection. Okay? They lived with Christ the 1,000 years. So you have to be resurrected to live with Christ. You don't have an disembodied soul or spirit that runs to heaven the moment you die and the body just stays there. So this is the idea, what is coming out. And Satan is attacking people, and he makes people drunk with all kinds of stuff. And lastly, Christians will become like the world, focusing on the cares of this life rather than looking for the life to come. This is what Jesus is saying there. The second thing that Jesus warns people about is to watch. To watch is to be alert like a soldier at his post. You watch and you scan. A soldier is always ready to see what is happening. Okay? That is a good soldier. Instead of focusing on the natural disasters that will befall humankind, the Gospel of Mark brings our attention to a parable Jesus told of Christian behavior before he returns. And this parable was very important. And we didn't have the time to discuss it in our devotion. But here, look what it says. Mark 13, verse 34 to 37. It is like a man going to a far country who left his house and gave authority to his servants and teach them his work and commanded the doorkeeper to watch. Watch therefore, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, in the evening or midnight, or at the crowing of the rooster, or in the morning, lest he come suddenly, he finds you sleeping. And what I say to you, I say to all. Watch. Jesus seemed to be more concerned for those of his household than he was concerned about the world. As Christians, we are part of Jesus' household. Aren't we the temple of the living God? Isn't the Christian church, brothers and sisters, members of one another? Aren't we the building blocks of Jesus' house? And then he says, what should we do? We should serve one another. You have been given gifts to serve one another in the church. But what is Jesus accusing his people of doing? What does the text say? I find you sleeping. Instead of serving one another, each one was sleeping, doing their own thing, or just didn't care. Wow. To circumvent sleeping, Jesus said we ought to watch. Watch. The third thing, believers are to pray, Jesus said. This is the last thing Jesus wants his disciples. To pray is to talk to God. Talk to Jesus as you would talk to your father or to a friend. Without prayer, there is no communication with God. Think about it. How can you and I be friends if we never talk to one another? Never, ever. How can you say, I'm your friend? How can we say God is our God when we never communicate with him? While God speaks to us through his word, we are to talk to him in prayer. I have a few quotations that I want to share with you, which I think is so beautiful. These are a compilation of some of Ellen White's comments that she made in a new little book called Prayer. And the first one is like this. Let's see if we can get it. Note what Ellen White says. We have come to serious times. We've come to serious times. Events in our world call upon every follower of Christ to be totally in earnest in our relationship with God. To strengthen this relationship and satisfy our emotional and spiritual needs, we must learn the power of prayer. Did you get that? To satisfy our emotional and spiritual needs, we have to pray. This is where the strength comes from. Okay? We must plead with the Lord, like the disciples of old, saying, Lord, teach us to pray. Let's look at the next one. Oh, I love this one. It says that God is willing and ready to hear and to respond to our heartfelt prayers under all circumstances is profoundly reassuring. He is a loving Father who is interested in both when things are going well and when the vicissitudes or unpleasant circumstances of life deal with devastating, tough, and terrible blows. When we feel like crying out, God, where are you? It is good to know that He is just a prayer away. God cares when we are in difficult times. Are we in difficult times? We are. I have just lost this past week 3 family members and 1 very good close friend in South Africa to COVID. And some of you have also lost many good friends and family members. And you say to yourself, how can I change this around? How am I able to survive emotionally and spiritually when I feel my prayers only reach the ceiling of my house? Next one. If we can look at the next verse, next quotation. Keep your wants, your joys, your sorrows, your cares, and your fears before God. You cannot burden Him. You cannot weary Him. He who numbers the hair of your head is not indifferent to the wants of His children. The Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy, James chapter 5, verse 11. His heart of love is touched by our sorrows and even by our utterances of them. Take to Him everything that perplexes the mind. Nothing is too great for Him to bear, for He holds up worlds. He rules over all the affairs of the universe. So whatever I bring to Him is nothing. Oh, the next one is even more interesting. Nothing that in any way concerns our peace is too small for Him to notice. There is no chapter in our experience too dark for Him to read. There is no perplexity too difficult for Him to unravel. The relations between God and each soul are as distinct and full as though there were not another soul upon the earth to share His watch care. Not another soul for whom He gave His beloved Son. Wow, I thought that was wonderful. Prayer. Don't you want to start praying now, Susanna? Now we can pray, isn't it? Now we can ask Sister Busara, because we know God cares. Now we can ask Michaela, does God answer prayer? He does. Sister Nell, you are not alone when you are alone. God is just a prayer away. How beautiful. In one of Ripley's Believe It or Not books, I don't know if you, how many of you know that those books, Ripley's Believe It or Not? It is something similar to the Guinness Book of World Records. It's just not about records broken. It's about strange things that happen in the world. That is true. Okay? And so in this one book of Ripley's Believe It or Not, which I had in my library, is found the story of a man who went to bed every night fully clothed in a suit until he died at the age of 95. In a suit. Yeah? What was the reason? One Bible verse made a profound impression on him. And it's found in the book of Revelation chapter 16, verse 15. And this is what it says. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Well, this man says, I don't want to be found naked when my Jesus comes upon the clouds of heaven. And that's why he wanted to look his best when Jesus comes. So he would put on a suit, ready to meet his Lord. The man's reactions may be a little bit eccentric, but it reflects the essence of what the Apostle Peter was saying to us in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13. Therefore, gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and rest your hope fully upon the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. To gird up the loins is to put a belt around your waist to keep your clothes up so that they don't fall down. Okay? But Peter says, put a belt around your mind so that your mind does not wander away and fall off around with the things that are around you. Huh? Do not let it carry you away. Let your mind remain focused on the soon coming of Jesus. Okay? Be sober-minded, be clear-headed regarding the things that are happening around us. Many false teachings are making the rounds on the web, and people believe everything they read and see, even that the COVID virus comes from Bill Gates. And the jabs that we get, Bill Gates is making money out of it. Okay? And if you don't get your jab, you are lucky because you are not going to get the mark of the beast. Because that is part of the mark of the beast. They plant a chip in you, in that little syringe that they put through that needle, all that little stuff that they put through. Mark of the beast. These are the things that are running around on the web. Not biblical, but people take it hook, line, and sinker. Lastly, brothers and sisters, study God's word. Let it be your lamp that shines in a dark place until the morning star rises in your hearts. Keep your hopes fixed on the grace bestowed upon us. Grace bestowed upon us until the revelation of Jesus. So I want to end with Jesus' words. Take heed, Brother Mike. Watch, Brother David. And pray, Brother Otello. For you do not know when the time is. We will now have a minute of silent prayer, where you and I will talk to the Lord and ask Him to help us to take heed, to watch, and to pray.